Okay, here we go. I'm going to use the Dodge Neon I'm currently working on for this little instructional bit. Now, what you're looking at here, the outside work is done. Everything I have to do out here, that's why this container's up here. And you can see there's obviously something missing from over there. Lines aren't hooked up and stuff. That's because of what I'm having to work on the interior. The part in the interior is being extremely difficult. I had to ask for an extra day because it's being that tough. But anyway, that's still interior. The engine part is out here. The engine part I'm going to tell you about. So I don't have to worry about that for this video. I'm trying to find a way to hold this phone and really explain it. Yeah, there we go. Alright. Yeah, see the spark plug holes. Now, one of the first things you'll notice how they're on top, easily accessible. That's only, and I do mean only, possible in overhead cam cars. So that makes that part a little easier. And non-overhead cam cars, they're more on the side. I probably shouldn't have focused on that first. You'll understand that more as you learn more about how overhead cams work. But anyway, the spark plugs go into the cylinders. That may be why I focused on that first, because that's a good way to point that part out. They throw the spark to make the fire in the cylinders. The cylinders are under here. A decent bit under here. And move up and down, compress air as they go up. And then when they get around the top, gas is dropped in, they get lit by the spark plug and everything and shoot down. That shooting down from the fire exploding is your power. If that's not working, you don't have power. That's the main thing that makes your engine function. But the reason I bring that up is to explain how they all work and to help you get an idea of what a head is and why it's so sensitive. Now, this top part is just a valve cover. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, it needs a bit of a release. And yeah, there's one over there. Positive crankcase ventilation. A lot of pressure builds up in here from all the gases exploding and stuff, and it's released. This doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. But again, this is just the top. This only covers things like the valves and stuff like that to keep mainly to keep the oil from getting out. That's one of the biggest reasons for a valve cover. It just keeps the oil from getting out and keeps the spark plugs contained in an overhead cam car. Doesn't do much else. It doesn't have to be that precise, long as it's not letting a ton of air in or a ton of liquids out, mostly liquids. Now, the intake, let's see. This car's got the intake at the front. This is the intake. On yours, the intake's on the back. There's that big metal thing up above your engine. You've seen that, but it's probably going to flow to something like this. That's going to come into 4 different ports for each cylinder. You got to take that off. This is the intake part. On yours on the back. Your exhaust is on the front. Yours is kind of flipped the other way in that sense. But at the same time, the things you'll need to work on, like timing and belt, are still on this side, the passenger side. In both cases, even though the intake and exhaust are flipped around. But yeah, this is just mainly for oil holding and shit like that. And but that's the thing. Under this, you're talking about a head which has to hold that compression. Like when the cylinders come up, has to be airtight and hold that air to the perfect nth degree. And that thing has to be abso-fucking-lutely perfect. So whereas this top part, you're going to have a decently easy time with. In fact, on that Toyota, you'll have a super easy time. It's even easier in this one. This one has some tricks in it even your Toyota doesn't. Your Toyota is super easy up here. These bolts. But again, your bolts will be under these wires. And that's it. Just the 4 wires. Once you get them out, bolts be under there. Take this whole top piece off. Yeah, everything underneath, have fun. And that's why you have to touch on the timing and anything overhead cam. The cam is going to be, that's what this shape is. And you're going to have to take the timing belt or chain off. So you're going to have to learn timing. And in the case of actually taking it off, you're going to have to actually learn it. You can't even do the trick I did for Jason's. The trick I did for Jason's made it easier. But that only worked in my case, will not work in yours. You must get yours to timing before you take it apart. And there's a very big reason to that. On the side of your engine, all that plastic shit is your timing cover. And on your crank, which is around the bottom part of the belt, there will be a thing on the top of it that has degrees of TDC, top dead center, 0 of timing. You need to get it there. Once you start taking it apart, at least take all the spark plug wires and the battery, all those connections for that all first. Then you can do that. If you find a socket big enough to turn the crankcase, turn that until you'll see a little notch in the grooves. It is aiming at the TDC, the 0 mark on that plastic piece. And then take your shit apart. Do not do that. Do not take your stuff apart until that's there. And that is at an absolute 0 point, both for your top and your bottom. And the reason I say that is your bottom won't be easy to move. Your top will. In fact, you'll be taking it off, that cam. But that cam has a little slit behind it with a hole. And once you put it back on, you can turn it and use something to kind of look into it. A little camera or whatever. And once it's lined up with that notch, that's when you put it back together. That'll be 0 on both. Those are the only 2 parts that are important to be lined up in a timing sequence. And that's basically how you have to put it together. But again, that's why it's so fucking exact. This isn't exact, but everything below it is. In this car and in yours. So yeah, sorry if that was an overload of details, but it's what you're looking at.